Okay, so today we're going to take an objective look at Starfield, now that it's been a few weeks and players have gotten past the initial launch shock and honeymoon period of the game's release, and talk about why Starfield, even though it's a successful release for Bethesda and over 100,000 people are playing it on a regular basis, is actually a failure for the gaming community. Because nothing says failure like millions of sales, right? I know I sound like an idiot, but hear me out. Like the video if I sound like an idiot. As Bethesda's newest IP in over 25 years, hundreds of thousands of players were rabidly waiting for its release, and while reviewers were farming the love as well as the hate for the game, the reality of what Starfield truly was began to sink in as players spent more and more time in the game after it was finally released. And that truth is that Starfield isn't just Fallout 4 in space. It's Fallout 4 in space with a few half-baked systems and graphical updates that fail to bring Starfield up to the standards of modern gaming today, regardless of what professional game reviewers might say. I mean, let's be honest, the only reason professional game reviewers gave Starfield a score higher than a B rating is so Bethesda will give them review keys when Elder Scrolls 6 is about to release. But with Starfield's release, Bethesda revealed themselves to be old-timey designers stuck in the golden days of their Skyrim and Fallout success stories and chose not to innovate in a meaningful way for their new IP because we all know that Starfield should have revolutionized the genre. The company is like some funny popular kid in high school that you run into who literally hasn't changed a decade later. They still live with their mom and they live their life as if they're still in high school, telling the same jokes they used to in order to relive the best years of their lives instead of growing and improving as a person. For whatever reason, Bethesda as a company or Todd Howard himself are just rehashing old ideas and trying to recreate the success they found with Skyrim and Fallout a decade ago by doing the same thing except in outer space. It's a brand new IP because it's in space and you can build a spaceship. Never mind that the rest of the game is a step backwards in innovation compared to their games, again, from a decade ago. Bethesda is a company holding on to their past successes too hard to truly innovate without the creation engine. A game engine like a walker with tennis balls for these devs and actively limits what they can do and create in the modern gaming age, on top of refusing to learn from the past and improve upon what they've already done. Even if the devs are familiar with the game engine, it's impossible for them to create games that can be held to modern standards when that engine itself is incapable of that task. Or maybe it's just the company as a whole that is incapable of creating a revolutionary game because it's hamstrung by devs that cannot let go of the past and improve upon it. Those of us waiting for Elder Scrolls 6 should probably be worried about the quality of the game when it's finally released, if it's going to be created by this geriatric game engine that should have been retired years ago. However, Starfield, even with all of its faults, failures, and unapologetically dated overall design that, in my opinion, fails to meet modern gaming standards, is actually a colossal success. With millions of purchases worldwide, there's no reason not to celebrate their success, right? Right? Well, it encourages them to regurgitate their old, outdated systems with no improvements like their Outpost system, or even reuse old systems and somehow make them worse like the crafting system. In Fallout 4, if you craft a silencer for a pistol, you spend resources to make it. Then, later on, if a similar pistol drops with better stats, you can take the silencer you made off of the first pistol and slap it onto the new pistol with no resource requirements. In Starfield, if you find a new pistol, you have to make a brand new silencer from scratch even if you've already made a silencer for an identical pistol already. And taking away a part of looting that I found enjoyable. You could have a crazy weapon drop and then upgrade that new weapon with parts from your old weapons that you already had on hand, or taking parts from that crazy new weapon and putting them on your current favorite weapon to make it even better. I like the research requirements to a degree, but you can't meaningfully improve any of your equipment through the vanilla system. But of course, this is something that will change once modders come to the rescue once the toolset is released next year. The number of Starfield units sold based solely on Bethesda's name and the hype of a new IP also encourages them to release a game with the traditional Skyrim jank that's been a meme of the company since 2013. It's like making NPCs function like normal human beings is too complicated for the devs. That success stifles their creativity and drive to innovate on games that could redefine the genre in the same way that Skyrim did. Instead, it creates this situation where side-by-side comparisons are being made to decade-old games, and those games are somehow better quality than what they've created today with Starfield almost 10 years later. But why would a game company like Bethesda choose to hold on to a decade-old design philosophy like an old teddy bear that smells like cheese and avoid innovation and improvement when it comes to creating an entirely new gaming experience? We can only speculate, but honestly, it probably comes down to playing it safe and money. If they can release a half-baked game today that was revolutionary for 2017 for a very cheap price by reusing code, systems, assets, and whatever else they can, why wouldn't they? Then they allow modders to come in and improve everything Bethesda has done for free and market the move as helping the modding community, which helps move more copies and builds anticipation for the release of modding tools and their future DLC. Maybe the NASA Punk design scheme they were so proud of was just an excuse to avoid reimagining their weapon system for a game set 300 years in the future. After all, no one can really argue that we essentially have the same weapons that were in Fallout 4, except for the mag weapons, which ultimately are just redesigned Gauss weapons. What would the weapons look like if they decided to design more futuristic style weapons? From there, how would that have impacted the crafting system? Unfortunately, the gaming community will never find out. Until you play Cyberpunk 2077. Instead, thanks to the NASA Punk style, the world is pretty drab and boring in a way I wasn't expecting. Like, Bethesda started to do amazing work with the story and some ship designs, and then quit trying halfway through. The Crimson Fleet story is an amazing questline to work through, with a pretty satisfying ending. The dialogue is bad and the choices are irrelevant, but the overall story is great. The main story, on the other hand, lacks many of the elements that made the pirate questline good, and gives you an ending that requires a few college courses in philosophy to really appreciate. And let's be honest, gamers aren't exactly known for their prowess in highbrow philosophic thinking. The ship habs are another great example of this. 5 different companies with 2 or 3 similar layouts copy-pasted between them with different paint jobs and lighting schemes. And a handful of amazing hand-built structures fed to us multiple times as random structures on procedurally generated planets, showing how few of those structures were actually made. But all the while I'm thinking and writing about all of this, I'm actively wanting to play Starfield and would prefer to play Starfield compared to other games that I have access to right now. I have the new Cyberpunk DLC, but I haven't even accessed it yet. And it might be a while before I do because right now I would rather play Starfield. There are other games I want to try and other games I'm excited for, but right now I would rather play Starfield. And that's where the reality of Starfield's success lies. Idiots like me who enjoy Starfield even though it's objectively an inferior offering compared to other major games released recently, namely Baldur's Gate 3 and Cyberpunk 2077. I've said in a previous Baldur's Gate video that what matters is how a game feels to play that will dictate how successful it is, and that's 100% the case with Starfield. While Bethesda absolutely threw away any chance they had at a Game of the Year award and handed it to Baldur's Gate 3 on a silver platter, the game itself is fun to play to a certain degree, and personally, I would rather play Starfield than Baldur's Gate 3, simply because of the open world nature of Starfield. But the reality is this: Bethesda failed to make their first new IP in over 25 years a modern game in any sense of the word. They failed to create a high-quality experience worthy of the name of the studio that made Skyrim. They failed to innovate, and they failed to push themselves to create a game that, like Skyrim, would set the standard that the gaming industry would collectively look to for inspiration. Instead, that honor lies with Larian Studios and Baldur's Gate 3. And while Bethesda did find success with Starfield, that success means that players who defend Bethesda don't realize that they deserve better than what they've gotten in Starfield. Or if they do, they're more disappointed than anyone at what Starfield turned out to be. An okay game designed to be improved by the community while the devs sit back and let them. You just have to look at the top mods on Nexus to see the work Bethesda saved themselves already. But players are content for the most part. Bethesda made Fallout 4 in space, and it was a colossal success, whatever that means. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. I'll be reading them as I play Starfield and think about playing the Cyberpunk DLC. Anyway, like the video if you liked the video, dislike it if you disliked it, and until next time, I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.